Imagine you had it all: money, fame, cars, wealth, and everything else that signifies riches. But then, somehow, you lose everything and end up fighting for scraps. Well, this scenario doesn't just play out in the movies. It happens to real people, and in this case, entire nations. Meet Nauru, a small nation that once was the richest in the world, but lost it all within a decade. How did this country become so poor all of a sudden, and what was the source of their wealth in the first place? Join us in this video as we explore all these and more. The Republic of Nauru is a small island with a landmass of 8 square miles and about 11,000 inhabitants. It is the third smallest nation in the world and is located in the South Pacific Ocean, northeast of Australia. This small island country once had it all: fame, riches, and natural resources. But within a twinkle of an eye, it was all gone. They experienced one of the worst economic downturns ever in the history of mankind. You see, Nauru wasn't always rich. In fact, the country wasn't much of a country initially. Nauru was first discovered by the Europeans in 1789. At the time, it was covered with green vegetation, white sand beaches, and several palm fruits and coconuts. The striking beauty of this place made the British name it Pleasant Island. A few decades after its discovery, the first group of humans came and settled here. At first, it was believed that coconuts, palm fruits, and pigs were the only unique resources on this island until a British geologist found something valuable: high-grade phosphate ore. These rocks could be processed to produce fertilizers and make cosmetics too. But with this discovery came a new vision, a new mission inspired by greed. Folks who had just come to cruise on the island now wanted to make money from this resource. And so began the mining of phosphate ore on Nauru. It's important to note that agriculture was a top priority in every nation of the world at that time, and fertilizers were a necessity. And so you can imagine the demand for this mineral, the very thing needed to make fertilizers. Everybody wanted a piece of Nauru's phosphate because it was the highest grade ever found. And even more, the mineral was located close to the topsoil, so mining was as easy as pie. Germany was the first nation to receive mining rights since they were the colonizers of Nauru at the time. In less than a decade, over 80 million metric tons of phosphate ore had been mined and exported from this small island. But as the World War broke out, Germany lost focus on Nauru's gold mine, and Australia quickly seized the opportunity. By this time, Nauru was no longer the pleasant island. It was more of a treasure island. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie, especially Australia, of course. No one cared about the once beautiful island, now fast becoming an eyesore. But you see, despite its deplorable state, Nauru was still very much rich in phosphate. But something terrible happened. During World War II, Japan invaded Nauru and killed so many inhabitants, to the point that only 600 of them were left afterward. After the war, the Japanese left, returning ownership of the island to Australia. You'd think that Australia would conduct a massive restoration project to save Nauru, but no, they only continued digging for gold. From 1945 to 1968, phosphate mining on this island reached all-time highs. On 31st January 1968, Nauru gained her independence. With this came the free will to stop all mining operations and rebuild the nation. But no, they didn't do any of that. Nauru simply continued from where her colonial masters stopped and kept on mining. You see, the country had already gotten used to the routine of mining and exporting, and their entire economy depended on it. Besides, their land was pretty much useless for anything else because 1/3 of the island had already been lost to excessive mining. What used to be beautiful green vegetation was now an arid land with limestone boulders sticking out of the landscape. At this point, agriculture was already a lost cause. And so, the Nauruans accepted their fate: mine, sell, and make money. After all, it was very lucrative. In fact, it was so lucrative that it made this country stinkingly rich. Nauru became so wealthy that it became known internationally as the richest country in the world. Their GDP per capita as of 1981 was 27,000 USD, equating to a present-day value of 88,000. If you don't get the idea, per capita income means the average amount each person in a country earns yearly. This value is obtained by dividing a country's income by its population. At the time, the United States GDP per capita was just 14,000, meaning the average Nauruan citizen was twice as rich as the average American. Nauru was doing well for itself, and its citizens were pretty much swimming in cash. There was free education and healthcare, and royalties from the phosphate exportation business were paid to citizens. In fact, unemployment wasn't an issue at the time, and even jobless people owned sports cars. During this time, the funny story of a police chief who didn't fit into his car went viral. The officer had spent a fortune to acquire a Lamborghini and ship it to the island, only to realize his obese size didn't allow him to fit behind the wheel. As funny as the story was, this man was just one of the many people in Nauru suffering from a health crisis, obesity. It turned out that having so much wealth and freedom came with its own downsides. The people consumed too much junk food. The rate of junk consumption worsened because they didn't have many food sources. Everything edible had to be imported. Of course, importation wasn't a problem. They had all the money to cater for that. However, since there were no farms, there were no fresh fruits and no fresh crops. Most meals people ate were straight out of a can, with a bottle of soda to wash it down. An anthropologist from the University of Oxford who went there on vacation commented that she was lucky to find one vegetable weekly. But you see, there was nothing the government or anyone could do about the situation. The land was only good for mining, so they had no choice but to import all foods, including water. Besides, the money kept coming in, and so it seemed senseless for the government to focus on wasting money to set up agriculture or any other industry for that matter. However, one thing the people of Nauru forgot was that natural resources are limited. Diversification of the economy would have been a very good way for the country to survive or escape the rainy day. When signs of phosphate depletion began to show, the government tried its hands at other industries. One of the significant things the Nauruan government tried was offshore banking. Initially, the project was a success, though the methods the government employed to run the project were questionable. Customers didn't need to visit the country physically to open a bank account, and they could easily obtain citizenship and a Nauruan international passport. No other nation provided easy citizenship or bank account opening as Nauru did. In a short while, the country started earning millions through customer fees as money launderers, thieves, and tax evaders patronized them. It wasn't long before other nations started calling out Nauru for its dubious methods. The US even categorized Nauru as a rogue state. The immense pressure made Nauru stop the offshore banking business, thereby saying goodbye to a multi-million-dollar franchise. The next thing the Nauruan government tried after this was to invest the wealth generated from phosphate mining, so it could bear dividends and profits, so coming generations could enjoy. However, this too failed, but this time it wasn't due to international pressure, it was because of greed. So many other projects were attempted by the nation to try and restore its dying economy, but bad planning, poor implementation, and fraud made Nauru fail. By 2001, the country ran out of phosphate, and her foreign investments were nothing to write home about. The country became broke. Nauru was so broke that even the central bank became bankrupt. There was no revenue source to fall back on, both overseas and locally. Even their real estate assets overseas and their airplanes were seized. And so, within just a few years, Nauru went from being the world's richest country to one of the poorest. Things only got better for Nauru when Australia rejected a ship containing 400 Afghanistan refugees, sending them to the offshore detention camp in Nauru instead. Australia paid Nauru for this, and it became sort of a regular thing. Whenever Australia had unwelcome visitors, they'd send them to Nauru first, and pay the Nauruan government millions of dollars to keep them there. This mutual partnership saved Nauru from total annihilation, and it's been going on for decades. The money Nauru gets from this is nothing compared to what they used to get from phosphate war, but it's enough to get by. Presently, Nauru is among the third smallest economies in the world. Quite a shame for a country that once surpassed Dubai in wealth. Remember to subscribe to our channel if you found this content valuable.